Hello there and welcome to Eagle Conversations. This is our podcast from Eagle and Agency where we discuss and look at ways to solving some of the issues and situations that we find ourselves encountering every day as an inclusive agency. And today with me, I have two great friends from the agency. And I'm always so proud when we have a podcast where we have our guests coming from within. And I would like to introduce Santiago, who's our creative director at the agency, and Matthew, who is our creative writer here at Eagle and Agency. Now, I'm sure you're asking, why do we have the creative director and the copywriter here on set for Eagle London Conversation or Eagle Conversation? Now, it's because as part of us being who we are, we're always looking at conversations and topics that are of the center of our being, that we hold dear to our heart. And I think one conversation that is really been very close to our heart is on migration. Now, why is migration such a big deal for us as an agency, especially at this time? Now, if you have been listening to the news just like all of us made, you notice that there's been so much focus on migration. And there's a perception that's been put out there making it seem like migration is all about people coming on dinghies or coming on the back of lorries, coming to take advantage of a system. But I think for us, migration is about value. Migration is about bringing difference. Migration is about opening our community up to be able to appreciate different cultures so we can all grow and thrive. And I think that's the reason why we came up with the concept to develop a short film, a film that celebrates migration, a film that shares the untold story about migration. And this is the reason why I've got these two wonderful members of our team on set who are the brain behind this short film, The Return of the Osprey. And we're going to dive into exploring why The Return of the Osprey and why we think that you as a viewer, either from a migrant background or from a non-migrant background, need to watch this documentary so you can learn something to help how you interact and relate and also value the people either from your same communities or people that are not like you. So guys, welcome and thank you for joining me on the set.
Hello, Philip, and thank you for having us.
Yes, hi Phil. Thanks for
So
having
I think I will dive in first maybe to start with Santiago. Now, I would say, why would you be interested in working on a film of this nature?
So this topic about migration came, just with my migration from Colombia to the UK as well. And it also represents like my community around and the people I work with every day. So I thought that it was quite important to just sum everything in a project that is not only one film. The idea is to make a few more films related to migration, but this one is the first one, which is a narrative film, and we are also working on a documentary, and hopefully we will be working in another 2 narrative shorts.
Thanks. And I think for us at Eagle, this is our heartbeat. When we bring teams together from different backgrounds with the same belief and value. And as you can see, Santi comes on board and thinks, you know what, guys, if this is what we are truly passionate about, why don't we put our passion to action? And this is, as a result, we're seeing The Return of the Osprey. Now, Matt, we always joke in the office when we are discussing this conversation that people watching would think, who is he? He doesn't have any understanding of migration, but they don't know that you have a deeper story than even probably all of us here. So, Matt, you've been very involved in the writing the copy and the script for this film that is soon to be released. Now, can you tell us really what inspired you to see this story as something that you would want to really put your heart in and see it through from script to screen?
Well, like you say, if people were to look at me and hear the way I talk, they might not think that I was a migrant. But I was actually born in Hong Kong, which of course is another British colony. And I was brought up on very similar cultural traits, so to speak. And I was basically, in my own words, sent off to British boarding school. That's how I came to England. And from maybe the perspective of the British public, migrants come, like you say, to take. I really feel like I came to suffer. And that's a common theme when it comes to British boarding school. And so in the craft of writing and screenwriting, I take a lot of therapy through that process. It's very therapeutic for me. And of course, migrating to England is a big emotional theme of my personal history, and that has to come through in my therapeutic practices, like writing. So the theme of migration in this short film is also very personal to me, and that's why the story attracts me personally, and that's how I can weave my own experiences into the characters in the story.
This is amazing, and I think this is going to be very insightful because, like we said, whenever migration is talked about and we are talking about shipping people to Rwanda and all that, we are thinking of people that don't look like us in terms of the mainstream. But here's a case where you have a story, as a member of the mainstream, but having to find yourself growing up in another community, having benefited so much from that community's culture and experience to the point that now you're being sent back to what is supposed to be your home now feels like a punishment. Now, since you've touched on this film, I would probably want to prod you a little bit to share a little, not too much because we don't want to give it all out. But I know that in the film there was a depiction of trauma, especially when we're talking about people migrating. And that's the story that people overlook. We always look at the situation, that is the situation or the issue of migration, but we don't look at the personal stories that form the people that form the situation. Now, can you share what did trauma play, or why was trauma important in your depiction of migration?
It's a very seldom talked about topic when it comes to migration. The loss of identity is a major theme in migrants. The inability to adapt to a foreign culture is also a big theme in the short film. But not just on an individual basis, but what we pass on to our children, to the next generation. If they're second generation migrants, they've got to deal with not only a different culture, but the trauma that is attached to their upbringing via their parents. So generational trauma is another theme. And what the main character has to go through in the short film and navigate is multifaceted in that way. So mental health and migration are the two major themes of the story. And those two things together, I think, are quite rare to see on film. And I think that's why the film is worth doing, and I think that's why it's important.
And it's important, I can see, because a lot of time they look at migrants as being violent, or some of them being insular or being timid. There's all sort of negative reviews when it comes to looking at the way migrants behave in their communities. But then now you've hit on a very important point that sometimes these behaviors could be as a result of the trauma that they've gone through, and they're exerting that trauma through their behavior in terms of being either violent, either loud, or being too quiet, not being engaged and all that. Now, over to you to Santi. Can you share with us the experience, how your experience was like leaving one culture and adapting another? especially in your case, coming to study as well.
Yes, so it's been a challenge to move countries and also to change the language, and it's a struggle and a challenge every day to just start thinking in another language and start translating your whole life into a new language. But it's been great. I mean, I think that my experience is a little bit different to the average people one, because I came here to study, and also I kind of get along with the British culture quite well. I really enjoy fish and chips. I really enjoy the weather as well. I like the rain, and I'm very used to the rain, and a tropical rain that sometimes is even more challenging than the one we have here. So I think that my challenges when I came here are more centered in myself, and that's also one of the reasons why we focus on the mental health side of the migrant, because I mean, when we were talking about the script, Matt and we basically were discussing things that were happening to me as well. So, and sometimes even we were quoting my life. So that's the biggest part, like dealing with yourself, dealing with your own emotions, and all these like huge amounts of thoughts that can go through your mind, and that sometimes very simple things become like a big challenge, but just because you are alone. And unlike, for example, the Black community, I think that the Latino community is not that like close. But yeah, I think that, I mean, my story is very particular. And also, I mean, you know that I really enjoy rock music and like British music. I really enjoy all that cultural side of being here. So yeah, all my challenges are like with myself and loneliness, and it's just like, okay, what are we supposed to be doing here? Because when I came, I was not planning to stay. And and sometimes I feel that I'm still in this adventure, and that I'm gonna go back home and tell all this story to my parents and my friends. But I guess that's another thing, just like accepting that the time that you have spent here is time that you won't get back.
I mean, that's so important. Like, that's why, as an agency, we are so particular about making sure that we have diverse teams, so we can have diverse voices, and at the same time be able to support diverse individuals from diverse backgrounds in having a step in the industry. Now, Matt, I think what I want you to do is, if you can give us a little synopsis about what this film is all about, The Return of the Osprey. And a question that I also probably wanted to get you to add on to is, who's to blame for the children, second generation, whatever, failing to adjust, and what can be done in response to help, migrants, either from within, that's parents bringing children or whatever, to help them to really settle and feel at home. So maybe a synopsis about the film, and then we look at,
So the synopsis to the short film is basically a road trip story. The beginning of the story begins with the death of the patriarch of the family, and the daughter has to deal with the aftermath of that. And she's dealing with a lot of mixed emotions about her father's death, because they did not have a good relationship. Yet somehow she has to find some kind of personal growth through the journey that she goes on. And the journey that she goes on is basically to spread her father's ashes. So she goes on a road trip. Along the way, she meets some characters that help reflect on her emotional past, especially with the relationship of her father. And the processes that she goes through eventually help her reach catharsis at the end of the story. And as far as who's to blame for the trauma involved, of course, the trauma involved in our main character's story is caused directly from migrating. And it's more of a social commentary rather than a finger point to a certain person or a certain event about what is actually going on in modern human societies. People are forced out of their homes against their will or literally for any reason, and it does cause trauma, and what happens as a result of it is real. I don't think there's anyone really to blame. We can point at geopolitical events or politicians in particular, but really I think it's just the growing pains of humanity that we're all going through. But the story is important, and I think what can be done is to get the story out there, to make people more aware of these issues, to tell foreigners and locals of the hardships involved in migrating. And maybe they think twice about migrating, or maybe through the awareness they suffer less, which I think from a spiritual standpoint is definitely true. It's the unconsciousness of the traumatic processes that make the experience much worse. So this story, making people more aware, I think, is doing a lot to remedy all those problems.
I mean, that's quite deep there, Matt. Because I mean, taking my personal experience as first generation migrant from Ghana and moving into the UK, and then thinking of what probably I didn't understand or see as trauma, because then for somebody who has come from an environment where I felt I was in control and everything was within reach, and whatever I wanted to aspire or dream or want to become, it felt like it was literally within reach. And then coming into a new environment where with my same self I felt restricted, not because the system was not opening up, but just because I had to first learn a new culture, learn a new way of doing things. So like Santi said, I would have to replay my life all over again. And as a result of that, sometimes could affect your self-confidence. And that self-confidence then affects you in being able to be your best self. And it was until I overcame that I was able to now build confidence enough to say, all right, let's start an agency. Let's use this negative vibe to rather create a positive of creating an agency that now will look into how to celebrate diverse voices, and as a result of that, use that to help businesses to make more money or reach a wider audience to grow. So that's a great experience. But swinging back to Santi as we try to wrap up because of time, I just want to find that can someone fully recover, from migration? Does it depend on age? Maybe if you come in at the age of 5, would you ever recover? Or if you're 21,
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer. But yeah, when I first came here, I read that you get to you live in the place after 3 years of living there. I'm almost there. So I will tell you when I reach the 3rd year. But I also think that there is no reason why you should recover. I think that being a migrant is not a problem. I mean, anyone could be a migrant. Even people from the North Globe could just decide to go to the jungle and live there for the rest of their lives. So no one is exempt from becoming a migrant. And I think one of the important aspects of our film is that it's a comedy as well. And I think that there is a movie that is called this is a translation, a very cheap translation, that is Why Would I Cry If I Already Laugh? So it's like you recover when you laugh. Your life and all your kind of bad experiences become something else when you laugh. And that's what we wanted with this film, to just like allow people to laugh about like just like chaos, to laugh about also death, because I mean, what is more serious than death? But what is funnier than death? I mean, I think death could be also very funny.
So time's on our side, so we want to wrap up. 30 seconds from each of you why somebody should watch The Return of the Osprey. And also we have a crowdfunder going out there encouraging people to sponsor to make this short film become a reality. 30 seconds. Why do you think they should pay attention to this movie?
Cultural awareness is extremely important, and if one wants to become more culturally aware, they have to watch stories that they don't watch often. And because of the rarity of the story, it will add a huge amount to the zeitgeist, to the general public. And that's the top reason why people should watch it.
Santiago.
All right. I think people should watch this film because it's quite rare, it's quite funny, it's also made with a lot of love. It's made by people who are representing themselves in the screen, and it's made by voices who haven't been heard before. So yeah.
You've heard it all. This is a cultural experience. We're taking on a cultural journey. This is a rare piece. This is fun. It's comedy, all put together. But the most important thing, sharing a message of understanding and valuing what migration is all about. Looking beyond the topic migration and looking at the individuals that find themselves being migrants. Thank you guys for joining us on Eagle Conversation. And until we bring you our next super exciting episode, diving into another interesting story or topic, stay blessed.